So the next section they have is on speaking. And this is it's a big topic. I don't think I want to get into it now. The main point that I think we need to make is that, as Bhagavatam says, there's a million things you can talk about that are not Krishna. And all those things we talk about that aren't Krishna are the things that keep us in the material world. And this is the way to look at it. If you perform activities that are performed by people in the spiritual world, then you go there. And if you perform activities that people do in the material world, then you stay here. Because this is the world of Prajalpa. So if you like Prajalpa, this is the place for it. And then this is where you end up. Yes? And if you like speaking about Krishna, this is not the place for it. And you end up there. Simple, right? Also, because whatever you speak about is where your attention goes. And I've seen personally people can really get into little minute things about the material world. As you see in the universities. In universities, they get very specific. Yes? You study specific topics in depth. So you become very expert in a very minute detail of understanding material energy. It's a great way to stay in the material world. Completely absorbed in some specific aspect of the material world. You know, the eating habits of male chimpanzees in spring in the Amazon jungle on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I got my PhD in that. Isn't it like that? Yes? Is that crazy? And we understand that hearing about Krishna liberates us, purifies us. Hearing about the eating habits of chimpanzees in the Amazon jungle doesn't really help anybody. No, but by studying chimpanzees, we understand eating disorders of human beings. And we find that we can help them. No. But we say the eating disorders, you're not eating prasadam. Right? That's the real eating disorder. And you're eating meat, so that's the real eating disorder. It's all crazy. Now another interesting phenomenon is television. Because you create your nice home, your home becomes an ashram, and your ashram is to protect you from the influence of the material world. Then you turn on the television and you invite the whole world in. Loco. Another kind of madness. You're trying to get out of the material world and you invite it in. And then you get to watch people engaged in material activity. But what we're supposed to be doing is hearing about Radha and Krishna, not hearing about some fictitious story. of some man and woman trying to get together, and then fighting, then coming together again. Right? What's the point? Well, maybe the point is you can forget how much you're suffering for a couple hours. Right? And you can relate with the character and enjoy through him. Right? Is that what happens? That's called vicarious enjoyment. You enjoy through watching someone else enjoy. So, Prabhupada has given us everything we need to be Krishna conscious in his books. And to not read his books, and instead sit down and watch a movie is disrespectful. Prabhu, can I watch movies? Yes, if for every movie you watch, you have to read Prabhupada's books for 30 hours. Then you can watch a movie. Because it'll take you 30 hours of reading his books to overcome the effects of the movie on you. Of course, some movies aren't that bad. But you understand what I'm saying. No, if that's, if you're not reading Prabhupada's books, and finally you get some time, then you watch a movie, that's disrespectful. Because he's given you all this information to get you out of the material world, and you'd rather watch a movie or read the newspaper. Right? So, now, another thing is, we should understand, that as you advance in Krishna consciousness, everything about Krishna becomes attractive. So, you naturally want to hear. And so, discussions like this aren't necessary. Because there's a natural attraction. And what we should understand is that a symptom of advancement is that we're attracted to hearing, to chanting. This is natural. But if we're not attracted, we have to hear and chant to become attracted. We have to hear and chant in order to become attracted. So there's what is defined in our Shastra as gossip. It's called Gramya Katha. Gramya means village. So in villages, what do people talk about? Who got married? Who got divorced? Who had a baby? Who's in the hospital? Who died? Who doesn't like who? Who lied to who? Who stole what from who? So, you have magazines full of gossip, right? About all the movie stars. It's the same thing. Who married who got divorced, who had a kid. It's called Gramya Katha. And so they put it in the magazine and it's, global Gramya Katha. Not just your village. You can hear about all the big movie stars. So it's interesting that Shastra talks about this because it's something very attractive. And we even see this in the Hare Krishna movement, that people like to gossip about other people. What other people are doing, what they're doing wrong. Not what they're doing right, but if they do something right, you don't talk about it. If they do something wrong, you talk about it. Isn't it? More often, you'll talk about what they do wrong than what they do right. You won't talk about so-and-so gets up every morning and chants his rounds. You'll talk about so-and-so who doesn't get up every morning and chant his rounds. So we just have to recognize that it's a tendency. It's a tendency to seek out something that's wrong with somebody and talk about it rather than seek out what's right about someone and talk about it. Oh, have you heard what so-and-so did? And then you know, it's very interesting all the bad things he did. Right? Who wants to talk about all the good things he did? It's boring. So, one devotee, she said her grandmother said, "Why do you want to put the sins of other people in your mouth?" Nice. You like that? I like that. Why do you want to put the sins or carry the sins of others in your mouth? Anyway, we just have to recognize it's a normal human tendency. And that's why when you listen to news, it's predominantly bad. Because if they just reported the good news, that would be boring. Today, in the Ukraine, they had a program. Everybody got together, and then they were very happy and they hugged one another. Who wants to hear that? But they're all fighting and beating one another up, and problems in the government, and you're glued to the television. Look at that! That's interesting, right? Right, isn't it? Nectar. Juicy. Something to talk about. So, when we find a lack of taste for serving, for hearing, for chanting, then we should think, something's wrong. And if there's a taste for talking about the faults of others, at least we should recognize something's wrong. You know, we have this word nosy. That means you're sticking your nose in other people's business. Right? So if we do that, then we should understand something's wrong with us. Prabhupada has given us 50 books, 60 books. And instead of reading his books and discussing his books, we want to talk about the faults of others. That's a disease. That's a spiritual disease. Isn't it, Ashley? Isn't it a spiritual disease? In Ashley's country, many people have that disease. Don't they? It's an epidemic, I bet, in your country. And the vaccination, you read Prabhupada's books and you discuss Prabhupada's books. That's a vaccination for nosy people. Keep your nose out of other people's business. Ashley's going to make a t-shirt. Maybe Ashley will make a t-shirt. Keep your nose out of my business. Yes? I mean, I'm just trying to juxtapose what's happening. Here the pure devotee comes to this planet, he writes his books, so we have something to talk about. We keep the books on the shelf. We watch the news and movies and talk about the faults of others. That's pathetic, isn't it? But I'm just pointing out we have that tendency. Don't we all have that tendency? And it comes from a lack of taste. Because when you have a taste, then you talk about what you have a taste of. People always say, what do you think about devotees who do this and that and this and that? And my answer is, I don't think about devotees who do that. That's my honest answer. I just don't think about it. The only person I would think about who doesn't do this and that is myself, because then I can improve myself. Yeah, so why should I think about the others, unless it's my service? But if it's not my service, I don't really think about them. And neither should you. Because it'll just agitate your mind. Yes? Sí or no? 50 books of nectar. Collecting dust on your shelf. And you're talking about other people's faults. That's pathetic. So we have a comment from Ashley. Ashley says, when I did not know about offending devotees, gossiping was juicy. And it so-called spirited me up, fired me up. But it caused me distress much more, because I was horrible with my rounds. Then I knew offending devotees was poisonous. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. That offending devotees affects your japa. Everything affects your japa. And japa is the basis of it's the main spiritual practice. So if we do something that disrupts our main spiritual practice, that's like a crack in the foundation of a house. Now, it's easy to talk about this, but you need to get to the root of the cause of the gossip. And it comes from pride, because we want to pull people down. We're down here. We don't want them up here, so we'll pull them down. Trying to get them a little lower than us. That's material consciousness. So if we act in material ways and we're trying to be Krishna conscious, then we're undoing everything. It's like sometimes when you have kids, you'll organize something, and then while you're organizing, you don't notice, or they're disorganizing. You're putting everything here and they're coming and taking it out. You lined up everything, your books, and they pull all your books out. And your DVDs, they throw them. You spent the whole day, everything organized by topic, by author. And then, 4-year-old comes. Right? So that's the effect of criticizing devotees. You're just undoing everything good you're doing. Yes?
I understand this point. Wonderful. But like in the forgiveness workshop, the first exercise that you do is basically where the person is allowed to vent.
Yeah.
And so when people either want to do that to you, or you can find someone where you can vent, or you have another person who can vent.
Okay, that's a good question. So Timi Randasya, Timothy is asking, Om Jnana Timi Randasya. Timothy is asking that sometimes I've recommended, as we did in the forgiveness workshop, where if you're upset, you allow yourself to vent, which means talking about how you were hurt and what that person did to hurt you. And the reason we do that is not to commit aparad, and we only do it once to get through it and over it so we never do it again. Get it off your chest, so to speak. So Timothy, tell me what happened. Well, I went to the temple and this devotee said something nasty, and this was somebody that I had been helping, etc., etc., and I'm really angry, I'm really upset, shouldn't have done that. You finally, you talk about it and you say, okay. Women and gossiping. Did I talk about women and gossiping?
No.
What? See, you guys got a problem in your head because I didn't say women and gossiping. I said gossiping and you put women into it. You've been in ISKCON too long. Just see, that's horrible, isn't it? ISKCON is so against women that I say gossip and they put women in front of it. I didn't say women. I said gossip. And that's interesting. Wow. That means you've heard so many classes that women gossip. When the word gossip comes up, you think we're talking about women. We're talking about everybody. So that was done as a therapeutic to just allow somebody to vent. Like when we have that example of Daksha was very upset. And so Narada Muni didn't try to correct him, and he just let him vent, just to get over it. But after that, we would say that if you go beyond that, you vent, get over it, and move on. Now beyond that, it becomes counterproductive.
Venting every day.
Yeah, sometimes you may need to do that if you're really upset. We're having a debate here. And Lalita says, men gossip more than women. I think everybody gossips. Men could be more vengeful. I'm not sure. Men can be, I don't know, they can be tough, rough and tough. Anyway, but what we want to understand is that when we're criticizing somebody, it's coming from pride. That it's difficult for us that somebody is advancing. We don't like it. We want to pull them down. We don't want to be outdone. What if some young devotee is much more Krishna conscious than you? And people are saying how wonderful he is. If you're not humble, you'll deny it. Say, no, he's not. It's just beginner's luck. Because he's doing better than you. But if you're practicing some degree of humility, then you're very happy that they're doing well. If you can't win the race, help the person in front of you win the race. Wow. Is that too Krishna conscious for you? Are you ready for that? I don't know if I'm ready for that, Prabhu. I mean, that's pretty heavy. You know, like, help somebody get ahead and win? I don't know. I have to think about that. Give me time. You know, like they have this joke. It's not whether you win or lose the game. It's whether I win or lose the game. That's material consciousness. So now Lalita is saying, your service allows you to judge others. Then how it helps you? Or the question is, doesn't it harm you? Well, if your service is to correct others, then you're doing it because you're asked to do it. You're not doing it because you want to do it. And if your service is no longer to judge others or correct others, then you stop doing it. So you're only doing it because that's the order of your guru. Just like we were discussing yesterday, that when Prabhupada first asked the devotees to go to Eastern Europe, then the devotees thought, there's no vegetables or rice or grains or wheat, you have to eat meat. And Prabhupada so much wanted to preach in Eastern Europe, then he said, then if there's nothing to eat, then eat meat. Isn't that amazing? So you're not eating meat because you want to, you're eating meat because you have to live, and your guru said you could do it if there's nothing else to eat. Fortunately, they didn't have to do that. But that's the principle. So the principle as a Vaishnava is always glorifying others. But if the spiritual master or a manager sees that it'll be helpful for a devotee, if he corrects them, then he's only doing it to help them. And it's not coming from false ego. So it's completely different. Because it's the motive. So his motive is to help. And if you're not in a position to help and you're just criticizing, then your motive is to pull them down, to massage your own ego. So it's just, you do it because it's service. And you do it because it'll help somebody. Otherwise, don't do it. Not because you want to. I want to become guru because I'm a big fault finder. And then I can dovetail my propensity to find fault. That's not why you become guru. It's not why you become anything. If you have a tendency to find fault, become an editor. That's the best outlet for your fault finding. Become an editor, or in some position where you have to correct something. You know, a consultant who overviews something and improves it. But correcting people, if it's not your service, it doesn't help you. Yeah. You know, what Achincha is saying, if you can gossip about others, you'll gossip about your guru. It'll become a dangerous habit. An interesting thing that many people have observed is that if you're with a person that talks ill about others, there's going to be a tendency to think that he's probably going to do the same thing. He's probably going to talk the same way about me when I'm not here. I mean, a lot of people will think like that. He's criticizing everybody. So he's probably criticizing me also, even though I think he's my friend. Yeah, so, and then these devotees are saying, yeah, then people will gossip about their guru, which is like, what could be worse than that? So, anyway, the point we're making is there is definitely a strong tendency to gossip, which comes from a lack of attraction to Krishna, to hearing and chanting, and it also comes from the tendency to want to put yourself up by bringing people down. And it's very deeply rooted. And my personal realization is it's extremely difficult to overcome. And I think Anusha can confirm this. Unless you make an intention or a goal that I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go there. It's not how I'm going to live anymore. Because unless you make a deep intention, the tendency to do it is so strong, it'll just slip into your vocabulary. Because we've been doing it for about 25 zillion, quadrillion lifetimes. Is that a number? Godzillion. 200 godzillion lifetimes. It's so much ingrained in the psyche, and it can prevent us from being able to appreciate people. So we have to make an intention, very deeply internally, that's not going to be part of my life. But the interesting thing is, to make that intention, you have to want to live more humbly. Because if you make the intention not to speak ill of others, but you don't make the intention to want to practice humility, you won't be able to do it. Because they're contradictory. Like sometimes people make intentions, but there's something else in their psyche that prevents them from following their intention. So many people are what we call in America insecure about themselves. Insecure means they need acknowledgement and honor excessively. And they do things to get it. And if you're in that consciousness and you make an intention not to speak ill about others, you won't be able to follow it. Because your insecurity always causes you to bring people down. Because you don't feel good about yourself. So you have to bring other people down. And so much of that, gossip that goes on in trying to pull people down, it's done by people who don't feel, or they're not satisfied with themselves. And when you become satisfied in yourself, you tend to speak nicely about others. Yes? When when you're happy in your life, happy people are not critical people. Have you noticed that? People are really critical. They're not happy people. And they're even less happy because they're criticizing. Does that make sense? So the happier and more satisfied you are in Krishna consciousness, just satisfied with who you are. I might not be the greatest preacher in the world. I may not be the greatest pujari or the greatest pandit or the most talented kirtanier or the most famous devotee in Mexico. But I'm satisfied in my service. So you're not going to be critical. So a lot of us, we're not satisfied with who we are. And it creates an internal conflict. And it comes out in criticism. Yeah. Okay, so we have some questions or comments. Can I suggest something? If you say, Mahatma Prabhu, if you want to vent, do write your guru and vent, not to the whole world. What do you say? Probably better to vent to one friend. I don't know if your guru necessarily would want to hear your venting. But the principle is correct. One person, one friend, and say, I just have to express this. But your motive has to be, at Chintya and everybody, your motive has to be, you're expressing it to get over it. That's very important. And you're going to express it once, and you're going to express it to get over it. Otherwise, you could make it worse. You could express it, and then you say, now I'm really angry. I'm going to go tell the world about this. This is really bad. So you don't want to do that. That makes sense? So it's therapeutic. It's meant to get over it. Your motive is not really to put down this person. Your motive is to work through your emotions, so you're not holding them inside, and then you're always angry. So that's why they say, you vent, and then the emotion moves out of your body, and then it's gone. And then you say, now I feel better. Thank you for listening, I feel better. Right? That happens all the time. That's what friends are for, to listen. And we had a big section, in our Sacred Union classes, Grihastha life classes. We talk about the importance for men to listen to their wives. Because sometimes their wives just want to talk out their problems. So that's what friends are for. Not necessarily always to correct them or advise them, but just to listen. Okay, so we have a question from Antonio. Very good question. What is the difference between self-control and repressing some thought or emotion? Very good question. I have no idea. It's going to be individual with particularly what situation you're in. Now, if controlling our thoughts is what we should do, but thoughts also have emotional energy. And sometimes repressing the emotion part of the thought is a problem, because you're not confronting your feelings about it. You may have, let's say you have a negative thought about somebody. Now, along with that negative thought, there's going to be a feeling. So, we know negative thoughts are bad, and we try to control them. But inherent in your question is that it already happened. So now we're not even talking about preventing the thought. We're talking, it seems like from your question that it's already happened. And if it's already happened, there's probably an emotion that's going along with it. So yes, you should try to control those thoughts, but now there's a feeling. I hate you. That's the feeling. Right? So as I said before, if you try to suppress the emotion, it may not go away. It's just there, and that hatred builds up. So if you confront the emotion, allow yourself to feel it, and then when you feel it, you might begin to feel like this is the wrong way to think. The emotion might just make you feel so bad. Say, this is how I feel when I think this way. And that feeling is so bad, you realize it's wrong. Whereas by suppressing the feeling, you may not come to this realization that this is a wrong way to think. You know, because think about it. There are people who are very hateful, and some of them become devotees, and that doesn't change right away. And for some of them, it doesn't change very much, even after many years in devotional service. And I believe if they allow themselves to experience the hate, like what is actually going on in your body, in your mind, and your consciousness when you're hateful, and not deny or pretend that you don't, or just be oblivious to those feelings, then you would really feel bad. You'd realize how bad you feel when you're hateful, when you're hating somebody. And that could help you overcome it. Because then you'll start to think, what am I doing to myself? But if you're not in touch with those feelings, that realization may never come, and you may continue to be hateful and not realize how destructive it is to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
One devotee in a class, this question kind of came up. I like the example you gave because he said, it's like when you're carrying something heavy, and if you had control, you don't need to ask for help. But he said it's silly when it's like so heavy and people are like, oh, do you need help? Oh, no. Okay. It's kind of, he said you're suppressing the reality that you actually have something.
So Timothy is giving an example from a class that you're holding something and it's really too heavy for you to carry, but you won't let, people are saying, do you need help? And you say, no, it's okay. It's like you're denying a reality. So emotions are real, and they're not always things we want to experience. So then, problems are connected with emotions, and we tend to run away from problems. And we tend to run away from emotions that aren't pleasing. But my realization is, if you allow yourself to experience emotions that are not pleasing, then you do something about it. Whereas if you deny it or suppress it, it's like you put this little time bomb in a closet and you hope it's not going to explode and blow your house up. But it always does. And you got to come in and put your house together. And at that point you're thinking, I should have probably done something about that time bomb.
I have a friend who was vegetarian for some time. He was kind of devotee. And he felt like he was suppressing his desire to eat meat.
So Timothy's saying,
suppressing this desire.
So Timothy's saying, well, there was a friend of his that was vegetarian who felt that he was suppressing his desire to eat meat, which is a very good desire to suppress. But what we're talking about also is purifying the desire, transcending the desire.
So isn't it like you have to go through a stage where it's kind of suppression and self-control?
Not necessarily, because you can go, when we're talking about desire, you can also go I mean, if I were counseling him, I would say, okay, you can be in touch with your desire, but be in touch with the feeling. How does it feel? And then this desire to come up to eat meat, and I'll say, well, how does that feel? I would try to get him to the point where actually I feel like an animal. Like, okay, you have this feeling, but what is it? Where is it coming from? Why? And what's the ramifications of it? Because he's already been vegetarian, so he must know that that's better. So that's also part of a process. But in terms of saying, here, it's what Prabhupada would say is, okay, I feel like I'm suppressing, so eat curd fried in ghee. In some way satisfy that need.
So the suppression kind of seems to me that it's like a denial.
Yeah, suppression is denial. So he's not in denial that he has a need. He has this desire to eat meat. All right, well let's make these preparations full of cheese and ghee and urd dal and this and that, high protein. Let's satisfy your needs. And in Krishna consciousness, you say, well, you know, I have this desire, so our whole idea is, well, purify it. Okay, you know, purify your desire to eat meat. Eat, you know, eat urdal, that tastes like fish. You know, you can make things that taste like chicken and fish, and, you know, purify your desire. You know, or, well, I'm a very critical person. How can I engage that in Krishna service? There are services where, you know, you need to find faults. You know, clean the temple, find all the dirt. You can fault find by finding dirt, you know. So we all, you know, we recognize the bad side of the desire, and we also recognize how we can engage it. You know, if you're an angry person, you can engage that. Become a, you know, join the military, become a police officer, become someone where you can actually use anger, you know, against the right people, you know, like the criminals and, you know, people trying to blow up your country. And then when, you know, otherwise you're not angry, but you have the tendency to be angry, then utilize it. There's nothing wrong with being angry. Sometimes you need to be angry. Yes, there are some questions here. We are fortunate to begin learning sense control at a young age. I began learning about Krishna consciousness at 4. I'm learning that over time our attraction for Krishna's service will eventually win out over the disastrous Maya. Yeah, definitely true. Yeah. Yeah. So, and ultimately, what we understand is that we can't perfectly control ourselves without Krishna consciousness. That's just a reality. And Lalita says, she means controlling yourself rather than venting every day. As I said, vent once if you need. Then it's finished. Mm-hmm. So Ashley says, if I have your service to judge others, I will take pleasure. Okay, I'll hire you, Ashley. You come over here. Your service will be to find the faults in everybody and report to me what's wrong. You'll be so happy. So Ashley has to figure out, in order to avoid the Yamaduta, she has to figure out how she can find fault and engage that in service. Now, it's interesting. You can find faults, and it doesn't bother you. You're just finding fault because you want to help a situation. So you might say, I noticed this is wrong. You're not upset. You're not trying to bring anybody down. You're just trying to make the situation better. So your mood is generous. Your mood is to help. And then people will appreciate that. So Prabhu, you know, I was in your temple and I was thinking, you know, that if you did this instead of that, it would help things. Well, thank you for that. That's a good idea. That's different, right? So it's the mood in which you do it. Yeah. Thank you for that advice. That really helped me. Prabhu, I noticed that when you're chanting, you say Rama 3 times. Ram, Ram, Ram. Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you. The mood is right. You're just trying to help. If your mood is wrong, then the person may just get upset. So in devotional service, the mood in which we do things is all important. You could be the biggest fault finder in the world. In the right mood, and people will appreciate it. Because they know you're just trying to help them. Excuse me, Prabhu. Can I find fault with you for a moment? I have some things that can really help you. Now, of course, nobody wants to hear their faults. But at least if we're in the right mood and we have the right relationship with somebody, then it can be useful. So, Anusha says, it's not easy to avoid those who suddenly talk about devotees, and if you keep quiet, that means you're agreeing with them. Avoiding is a challenge. So she's asking, can we tell them off politely? Well, Anusha, in America, the word tell them off it means like you're going to get heavy with them. So what I think is a good suggestion is, let's say a devotee has done something wrong and a friend of yours is telling you about it. And you can say, I know what you're saying is true, but I don't think it's useful for us to focus on it. Or, I'd rather not talk about it. It doesn't help me. Just politely, nicely, just let them know that you're not into it. And, they'll find someone else to talk to, because it'll be no fun talking to you, because you don't want to hear it. I trust if you're keeping quiet when they're talking, that means you're agreeing. I think we must challenge them. Yeah, I think there's truth to there. I think both things are true. I mean, keeping quiet, you could just say whatever, or you could just walk away. When they're talking like that, you could just say, "Excuse me," just walk away. Probably they'll get the message that you don't want to hear it. But yeah, avoiding a challenge so we can tell them off politely. Yeah. Which in American English, tell them off politely is a contradiction. Because tell them off is basically, you're a jerk and shut up, and I don't want to hear you talking like this. That's what it means in American English to tell somebody off. So I don't know if you could do that politely. But I think we're on the same page. It's just like, politely, I'd rather not hear this. Right? If you're going to talk like this, I'm going to leave because I don't want to, this is not the way I want to live. Yeah. So, yes. So the answer to your question is yes. Politely say I don't want to hear it. Yes.
Normally I change the conversation. I mean, like in a slowly way, like. And he's like, change.
Wow! Look at that! It must have been an eagle. Oh my God! Alejandro's saying he's just changed the conversation. Hey, I know where we can get some Maha sweets. You want to go? That's a good idea. I like that. That's completely. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I got this really cool CD I want you to hear. You want to go here? Let's go to my room. Yeah. I like that. That's good. Mm-hmm. And Achincha's saying, yeah, if you're nodding yes while they're talking, not saying anything, we're agreeing. So. Here's another good one. We'll have to write a book, 10 Ways to Avoid Prajalpa. And as soon as you hear it, you go, oh my God, I'm late. I'm sorry, I have to go. We'll talk to you later. Because the Shastra says, if you're hearing Prajalpa, then it's the same as speaking offense, if you're hearing offense. So Shastra says, if the devotee is being offended, then you should leave. Now here's a real difficult situation. You actually hear criticism in a class. Subtle. Then what do? I was in a class like, I was at a home program, and a sannyasi said something which was derogatory towards grihastha life and children, but excessively, too much. And one devotee just spoke out. They actually had an argument with the sannyasi.
I think that's good.
And she was right and he was wrong.
Ella estaba en lo correcto y él estaba equivocado.
Now, according to Vaishnava etiquette, it's not really what you would do.
No es realmente lo que haría.
Maharaj, I think you're wrong about that.
Maharaj
I don't think that's right.
equivocado con esto. No creo que esto sea correcto.
Normally you wouldn't do that. This is a class in Vaishnava etiquette.
Normalmente no harías eso, y esta es una clase sobre la etiqueta Vaishnava.
But if you felt something was wrong,
Pero si sientes que algo está mal,
politely,
amablemente,
Maharaj, with all due respect,
Maharaj, con todo respeto,
the statement that you made,
lo que
I think could be potentially dangerous for devotees
potencialmente peligroso,
because of our history in ISKCON,
porque nuestra historia
with how we dealt with our children and how we've demeaned Grihastha life. I think some people may misunderstand this and it may have a negative effect. Something like that I think is proper if what is said is really bad, if it can be done in a
si lo que se dijo
polite way.
malo se puede decir de una forma amable.
Because it will also make the person speaking aware that, in this country, maybe you could say this in this country, but in this country, because of our history with children and families and failures of marriages, this is not good. One devotee told me that another way you can do it is after class, you could go up to the speaker and very politely say that. I said, to say, I don't think it's healthy for us because of our past to speak about the negative aspects of children and grihastha life because we have so much divorce in our movement. We need to speak more uplifting. And I just and most any speaker that will hear that will say, will thank the person. Thank you. You're right. I didn't realize that. So we have to help one another. Sometimes I go to a country and I'll say something, and then someone will say, "You can't say that here." And I'll say, "Why?" I'll say, "No, because that means this, or we have this history in this country." I say, "Oh, I would have no idea unless somebody told me." Like we were joking yesterday. The word for mother in Spanish is what? Mama? Mama. So I said, when you're translating, do you say Mama Yashoda? And they said, yes. And I said, do you say Mamacita? And they said, no. And I said, why? Because Mamacita is the way you pick up on a woman, right? Hey, Mamacita, what's going on? I didn't know that. So, if I was talking about Mother Sita and I said Mamacita, somebody would have to come and say, Mahatma Prabhu, you can't say Mamacita because this is what it means. And you're going to upset people. Thank you for telling me. So this has happened to me a lot, being in different countries. You don't know the culture. And you just say what's okay in your country and it offends people in another country. So we want to help one another. And if we need to present something to someone who is superior to us, then in the right situation, in the right context, maybe we might send an email. Maharaj, that was a fantastic class. I really appreciate it. I got a lot out of it. It really helped me. I just wanted to let you know in our country we've had this history in our schools and problems with children, and I think it's really important to talk about the positive aspects of family life. And I sense that maybe a lot of devotees in the class didn't appreciate when you were putting down, the difficulties in raising children. Difficulties in raising children, putting that. Because let's go, let's get moving. Because we've had problems in the past, and it was in many ways caused by this kind of negative talk. You said it, maybe a bomb will drop on your head, but I think, somebody needs to say that. And so you say it as respectfully as you can. Otherwise, it'll continue, right? And you might sit in class and say, well, nobody spoke out against it. Some senior devotee should have said something, but he didn't, so I'm going to send the Maharaj an email. And that's not an offense. That's not an offense. So, okay. So Ashley says, my guru hears me vent. Vent, yeah, that's nice. That's why I'm saying, if your guru is into hearing you vent, that's nice. Yeah. So is that Ashley's saying, you vent to move through it, to learn what you need to learn, and move on. And Tony has another question. No, we answered that question. The Guru Nishna says the 90-day challenge of no criticism. So in one article I said, take a challenge not to criticize anybody for 90 days. And then many people realize they don't make it past 3 hours. Because if you take a challenge and say, okay, I'm not going to criticize. I have another one. You get a thick rubber like this, rubber band, and you can, I don't know, like these friendship, it'll say, they'll say something on it, friendship or something. Get one, and every time you criticize somebody, oh, I just did it again. Right in the same spot, right? After a while, you're going to be really careful not to criticize because it's all red and bloody and painful.
Why do they have to do this?
Remind yourself, how red it is how many times you've been criticizing. Yeah. So Ashley says, I grew up being hateful, and once being critical was my breakfast. So this is also a really good point. A lot of us grow up in environments which are negative. Or even if we grow up in good environments, we pick up something that's not good. So we have to learn how to move forward without being overly affected by the negative. Yeah, not being, it's like, okay, this happened. Let's bury it, and let's embrace Krishna consciousness and the qualities of Krishna consciousness, and not blame our deficiencies on something that's happened to us in the past. And this is possible. For some people, it'll take longer and it'll take more work because the damage is deeper. For others, it'll be quite simple, just a matter of making an intention that I'm not going to commit offense. I'm going to appreciate. And it'll be not so difficult to do that. But as I said, you also have to become more satisfied in yourself. Or satisfied in yourself also, in a sense, means loving yourself, which is kind of maybe more of a modern psychological term. But I think it's, basically the same thing. I'm satisfied with who I am. I'd like to be like somebody else, but I'm not. So I utilize what I have, my talents, my abilities, and I'm happy to be using them in Krishna's service. And Krishna gives all of us different talents. And I'm satisfied for whatever talent Krishna has given me, and the ability and opportunity to use it in His service. When I was younger devotee, I wanted to be a sannyasi. So I wasn't satisfied. It was just a disturbance. And Prabhupada wrote many letters to devotees, and he said, a devotee means you're satisfied with your service. So to be satisfied with your service, you have to be satisfied with yourself. You're satisfied with your service, you're satisfied with yourself, you're happy. Then you don't go around putting your nose in other people's business. You don't care. It's the unhappy people that do that. It's the people who aren't satisfied, they do that. Isn't it? You agree? You agree, Ashley? I think so. Like Ashley was saying, she was angry. She had the way she was raised, things happened and made her angry. So angry people become critical people. It's like this nice statement of Mother Teresa. They asked her, will you go to an anti-war demonstration? And she said no. She said, but if you have a peace rally, I'll go to that. I'm not going to go to something against. I'm going to go to something for, which amounts to the same thing. But it's a different consciousness. Right? It's the same, you're doing the same thing, but the approach is different. I really like that. I think it's nice. So, maybe you've read this, that I've written this. What you are for uplifts you, inspires you. And what you're against drains you, degrades you. So I'm for peace, rather than I'm against war. Because when you're against, it all tends to be negatives. Yes? And what you're for tends to be positives. Yes?
I think it's because you're focusing your attention in that, you are doing it stronger. If I'm against the war and I just think I'm against the war,
Yeah. Yeah, because whatever you're against becomes negative in your consciousness, has a negative effect on your consciousness. This also sometimes happens in our preaching, that we preach very negatively about people, excessively negative about the karmis. We want to point out foolishness, but not excessively. Not like the whole day we talk about the stupid karmis. That's not healthy. Okay, any questions? Comments? No? Yes?
is there a limit to be self-criticized?
Is there a limit in how much we should be self-critical? Yeah, because being self-critical is a little dangerous if you don't do it properly. Because in today's world, many people are not emotionally healthy. And so Shastra says you should be very introspective and see your faults. Right? But if you're not in a healthy psychological state, if you look at your faults, you could become depressed. So you have to be careful. When you're Krishna conscious and you look at your faults, it just shows you what you need to work on, and then you get to work. You're like, where's the dirt? Okay, it's time to clean. What are we cleaning? Well, we're cleaning the walls. All right, well, there's some spots over there. Oh, where are the spots? Oh, I found the spots. Good, let me clean them. That's healthy. Otherwise, so many spots. Oh, this is depressing. I don't even want to clean. There's just too many. It'll never get clean anyway. What's the use? So I would say, as a general instruction, that we need to be careful with people who tend to be negative, to not be overly encouraging them to find what's wrong with them, because that's pretty much where they live. They live with what's wrong with them, but not in a productive way, in a way that hurts them. Right? So we want to be able to help them find their faults in a way that they realize, well, it's good I found a fault because it's like a disease and I can cure the disease. But I think even for people who are normal, excessively looking at our faults is not good. And then, as we've discussed before, then it can turn into something like you're trying to draw attention to yourself because you're fallen, or you're using it as an excuse to not be successful. Finding faults with yourself in the mode of ignorance and finding fault with yourself in the mode of goodness has a different effect. Because everything done in the mode of goodness inspires you to progress. And everything done in the mode of ignorance handicaps you. Oh, I realize that I have a tendency to want to always put myself in the center. I'm going to work on that. Whenever I see that tendency, I'm always going to push someone else to the center and move to the back. You're happy, you realize that. You're working on it. That's healthy. That's mode of goodness. Mode of ignorance, it's just you realize that and you become depressed. I'm so bad, I'm so puffed up, what's the use? I've been a devotee so long, still I'm proud. Always want to be in the center. So we just sent out a newsletter about self-compassion, which is to help you work through that. Okay, this is a problem I have. Let's work with it. But when we give up, when we feel bad, that's the mode of ignorance. And then you just stay down. It keeps you down. The more introspection you do, the more you're kept down. So it's counterproductive. Sometimes if we're proud, we can't be introspective because we can't acknowledge that we have faults. It's pain. If you're too proud, it's painful to acknowledge your faults. And if someone tries to point them out, you'll defend yourself, or you'll slash out at them. Interesting, right? So what I find most interesting about it is how an unhealthy psychology, just on the material level, can have make your spiritual life so difficult. Because in this example, something which is so important for us to do, which is to be aware of our faults so we can improve, if you're not in a healthy psychology, will be harmful for your Krishna consciousness. Isn't that interesting? The very thing that you need to do to help you becomes more harmful. So sometimes devotees say, well, does psychology help us? Do we need to understand it? And some devotees say, no, you just need to chant Hare Krishna, everything is there. And I say, yeah, that's true if you chant Shuddhanam, pure name. But if you don't, then these negative psychological factors in you could make it difficult to come to the platform of Shuddhanam. So in my experience as a teacher, the idea that you don't need to understand your own psychology or it doesn't have an effect on you is to ignore a reality. That we're all affected by our own upbringing, conditioning, and psychology. And so if we have an unhealthy psychology, we want to improve it. Now the question may be, how do you improve it? Can't you just improve it by chanting, taking prasadam, sangha? That may be true, that you can. In some cases, you may be damaged to a point where you need professional help. And I've seen that with devotees who get professional help. The problem they're having, and they're not able to deal with it, and they get professional help, and very quickly they solve the problem. Because the professionals are trained to understand what we can't understand. So, and a lot of priests are trained to do these kinds of things, to help people. What we do in our movement sometimes we throw philosophy at a psychological problem, and it doesn't solve it. You need to understand this and that. No, but there's been damage there, and it has to be healed. So it has to be approached differently. Okay. So Ashley says, I had the ego. I am a senior devotee. She's been a devotee 28 years. And you know how old Ashley is? Take a guess. 28. She's been a devotee for 28 years. She's a senior devotee. She's been a devotee for 28 years. So she's been a devotee longer probably than most people in her country, right? Especially the new people who joined. And same with somebody corrects me, she didn't like it, but now she's okay. And Vrindavani says, my Guru Maharaj always helps me finding the right way because being a conditioned soul, I tend to do something which is against my consciousness, against my own welfare. Okay, so maybe we should end class here? Okay, Annie? All right? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.